So like I mentioned in the earlier video for today, it's all OKC Thunder today. A team that fascinates me, and I think they fascinate a lot of people with the talent and the way that it never totally came together offensively for them, and they were of course just eliminated by the Jazz. This is very similar to the intro that I just had, so let's just get into the topic of this video, which is Carmelo Anthony. And I decided to do the 2013 Knicks custom roster because I want to remember the good times of Melo as I get into the rest of this video. So, funny enough, I remember earlier in this season, I think it was ESPN ranked Carmelo Anthony like the 70th best player in the NBA. And everybody called them crazy, including me. And I don't know if he's that low at this point. You'd have to really start busting out a list, but dude's stock has definitely dropped this season. We expected him to be a really good off-the-ball player for OKC because we figure, yeah, the guy's gotten a little worse athletically and all that, but now this is going to make up for that. Westbrook can get him open, Paul George can get him open, he can hit some open threes, attack some closeouts, attack some switches like with post-ups, and it's going to be fine. And it was not fine. The guy shot very poorly from the field, around 40%, I want to say is what he shot for the season. His true shooting percentage was around 50%, which is not good at all. To his credit, the three-pointers at 36% on 6 a game is not bad. But there did seem to be a lack of just a real advantage for OKC with Carmelo Anthony this season. Part of that being because he still wants to do a lot of isolation stuff where you give him the ball on the elbow, he does his signature jab steps, and a lot of the time it results in a contested jumper. And look, at one time he was great at that stuff. Now, not that time whatsoever. And when you have him doing that, it takes away from Westbrook pick and rolls, and I mean even Westbrook and Paul George isolations, which sure, that may not be beautiful basketball, but it's more efficient than Carmelo Anthony isolations at this point. And then that's just offense. I mean, defensively, yikes. Melo was one of the worst perimeter defenders in the NBA this season. The amount of times that he was attacked by opposing teams was pretty frequent. And if we're looking at his on-off numbers for the season, they're not exactly pretty. Now, the regular season, I think Melo ended up not killing them. Like, he was actually +5 in the regular season. I'm going to assume that some of that was because of different lineups that he played in, and teams are not going to focus on just attacking the worst defensive player in game like 34 because teams are trying to like build up their game plans for the season and all that, right? And I'm not backing this up with any evidence. That's just my guess. But in the postseason, in this series against the Jazz, Carmelo Anthony's on-off. Now, this is according to Basketball Reference, and they don't have Game 6 in there. They only have the first 5 games, but -27 on-off. On the floor, -12.5. Interpret all those numbers as you wish, but they were worse. They were a worse team with Carmelo Anthony in the game, and we saw that in the big comeback. It was Jeremy Grant with his switching defense and super long arms and blocking shots out of nowhere. It was Alex Abrinas doing what we want Carmelo Anthony to do at this point, which is run no isolations, run very little pick and rolls, and just spot up on the corner for Westbrook and Paul George. And then it was Russ, PG, and Steven Adams. I mean, it's just the way that the modern NBA is, man. It's multi-position defenders, three-point shooting, and a big guy who can set screens and finish at the basket and defend pick and rolls. Like, that's what it is. If you want to be an isolation player, you got to be really damn good at isolations, and it's just not where it's at right now for Carmelo Anthony. So what can he do moving forward to kind of get himself more in line with this modern day NBA? Well, number one, he's probably got to lose some weight at this point. I think at one time he was strong as hell. I mean, he's probably still pretty damn strong, and he could use that to be a really good post-up player. But this season, it wasn't happening. He was in the 43rd percentile of post-ups. Not good enough to do it regularly. Even in 2017 on the Knicks, he was in the 63rd percentile, and that was him still kind of declining. So in his heyday, Melo was a great post-up player. As I mentioned, well, I mentioned isolations earlier, but they're in the same ballpark. So that's number one. Probably lose some weight, drop the post-ups, make yourself a little more athletic, work on your lateral quickness, make yourself just make yourself a not bad defensive player. Like, if you can just be a neutral defender where sometimes you get beat, but it's not bad enough to where you're unplayable and teams can't just attack you all the time, then that would be great. And I would say just really get the three-pointers down, you know? Because I think it's fair to think that Melo can just be a lights-out outside shooter. He shot 81% from the line in his career. And the weird thing is, his three-point shot has been up and down pretty much his entire career. I mean, he really started shooting them frequently in, I guess 2011 when he arrived on the Knicks. And since then, like, it's been as low as 33 or 34%, and it was as high as 40% in 2014 on, like, 5.5 attempts a game. So it's been all over the place. But I think it's been good enough to where he can make shots. I mean, again, 36% on 6 threes a game is not bad. But it could probably be better, number one. Number two, he attempted 15 shots a game overall. So those are 9 shots a game that are not three-pointers, and, well, we know how that's going for him. The other interesting thing is that he's only shooting 2.5 free throws a game, which is by far the least he's ever attempted. I think, like, part of that is, of course, because you're just not going to get as many attempts because you're on this team with Westbrook and Paul George. I understand that. But it is also a sign that he just can't beat defenders in one-on-ones like he used to be able to, right? So it may be best for him to just stop doing that. Now, what's a little alarming is that he played 90% of his time this season at power forward. And that's fine. That's what he should be doing. But it's alarming that he's in the position he should be in at this point, and he's still not really playing that well. Because I don't think he could be a small forward anymore. Like, he's just not athletic enough. You put him at the 4, he's got some advantages, right? Like, he was matched up on Derek Favors in this series. I think Melo, especially if he loses some weight, could have an athletic advantage over someone like a Derek Favors or someone like a Markieff Morris, or hell, maybe even like a PJ Tucker. I mean, I know from a strength standpoint, PJ Tucker would give Melo problems, but from an athletic standpoint, like, if Melo loses some pounds here, yeah, I think he could do some stuff in transition against a guy like that, you know? So I don't think the dude's done. I just think he needs to make some adjustments here. Now, one scary thing is you could say that pretty much through his entire career, Carmelo Anthony could have lost weight. So I may just be barking up the wrong tree with that one. Are there other things that could be done for him in terms of lineups and all that? Could you put a team around him that can still be okay? Like, for like second unit type of things? Yeah, potentially. I mean, I think you could see some isolations for him when he is being defended by like second units. If I can see if OKC actually tried any of this season. They pretty much did not. All of the frequent lineups that Carmelo Anthony was in this year, they all either had Westbrook, Paul George, or both of them. So Billy Donovan didn't totally attempt to see if Melo could be that sixth man kind of guy, and if he did, he didn't do it for very long, you know? Now I say sixth man, I mean, like, you know, you're the token starter, but a lot of your time comes with the second unit. That's another thing we could talk about, Melo's humility. There were a couple of times this season where reporters brought up the idea of him coming off the bench, and, you know, he kind of joked about it a lot of the time. It may be that time for Carmelo Anthony to come off the bench, which I think if he embraced, he could be pretty decent at it, you know? Now, he'd also have to accept that you're not a 30 to 35 minute per game guy anymore. You might have to be more of a 20 to 27 minute guy, and depending on the team, you might not be able to play as much, but I don't know. Is he going to be willing to accept that? I mean, he's always seemed like a pretty good character guy. I mean, he's definitely a little hard-headed when it comes to accepting where he's at in terms of how good he is at this point. But he also handled the Knicks situation really well, where Phil Jackson was just totally unprofessional and just bad-mouthing him all the time, and Melo he said all the right things. You know, he was a professional about it, so there's a chance that he could have that acceptance of his game at this point. But who really knows? As far as where he's actually going to go in free agency, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's going to re-sign with OKC because he ain't getting that much money anywhere else. Now, I guess it could be kind of cool to see him decline the early termination option and then sign to a better team. I don't know if a better team would want him. I don't know, but we'll have to see. And then see if he would really accept shooting threes and not shooting 15 times a game and not isolating and not posting up as much. But who really knows? I hope this isn't the end for Melo, because in his heyday, he was definitely one of my favorite players. One of the more fun players to watch. It's too bad that he never really had the team around him that he could have potentially led to a few Western Conference Finals or Eastern Conference Finals as well. Maybe an NBA Finals trip. It's too bad, but hopefully the last few years of his career can be good, and he can actually be a positive piece of a team, kind of like how Paul Pierce was that one year with the Wizards. I think Melo's got that kind of potential in him, but who knows? We'll just have to see.